Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCullum, and I'm here today at the Croatian Police Museum in Zagreb, Croatia, taking a look at a number of really cool Croatian Homeland War submachine guns. Today, we have a Zagi M91. This is one of the more common submachine guns of this period and type. So the basic backstory here is Croatia gets democracy, gets its independence in 1990, and is almost immediately attacked by Serbia with the use of the remains of the Yugoslav People's Army. So at that point, Croatia had essentially no armed forces. They just had a few thousand relatively lightly armed policemen. And so there was sort of a chaotic frenzy of attempting to arm a new Croatian military force with anything that was available or could be made. Some guns could be imported, but not nearly enough, and this led to a lot of domestic production of firearms. In particular, whatever was really simple that could be made quickly on limited production, limited tooling, which is to say a lot of open bolt submachine guns like this. Now, this particular one is one of the better manufactured examples. This was made by an actual factory. So there was a Croatian entrepreneur, a guy by the name of Dražen Triputic, whose name I'm almost pronouncing correctly, who had the financial wherewithal to essentially start a company, hire a number of engineers specifically to create a submachine gun. And he named his company initially the first Croatian Arms Factory, which we'll see marked on here, later renamed to Weld. And they would go on to do some other firearms projects after this, but this is probably their best known one. Now, these were manufactured in 1991. This was during the height of Croatia's need for immediate production of small arms. By 1992, the military force was already starting to standardize and streamline, and guns like this went out of production. We'll talk about exactly what happened to them in a minute. But first, let's take a look at what Weld, or the first Croatian Arms Factory, came up with. So the intended concept here was to take an MP40 and modernize it. Now, the mechanical elements of the gun, as you'll see in a moment, are very closely based on the Sten, but the overall layout of the gun is more MP40-ish. Obviously, the stick mag here, and in fact, we have a magazine release right under there. This uses standard MP40 magazines. So this is in 9mm parabellum. It's had a rate of fire of 600 to 700 rounds per minute. There were two versions of it. This is sort of the standard version. There was also a version that was set up for a silencer where it didn't have this barrel shroud, and the barrel itself was perforated. And so without the shroud on here, you could just screw a silencer over the perforated barrel. I don't have an example of one of those to show you, but they did also make that version. Now, the factory that produced these was intending to do substantial manufacturing, and they set up some not trivial amounts of tooling, in particular to do plastic molds for the lower assembly and the butt pad. This is actually a telescoping stock. We'll pull that out in just a moment. We have the name of the gun, Zagi M91, down here. It's kind of funny, Zagi is actually taken from the name of a very popular mascot for what was sort of essentially a student Olympics in 1987. That's where they got the name from. So that's on the lower assembly. And then if we take a look at the upper receiver tube here, you'll see this is marked PHTO. That literally translates into First Croatian Factory Arms, which actually translates into First Croatian Arms Factory. We have a serial number there, which is B2006. That's not a sequential number. I'm not sure exactly where they started or what the D prefix is for, but production of these was not more than 2,000 guns and 9mm parabellum caliber. It's kind of cool. This one is also marked here because this was given as a presentation gun to the former Prime Minister of Croatia. It's actually dated there, 1991 it was presented to him. So cool element for this particular one. Yeah, there he is. He was the former Prime Minister. Now, the idea of taking an MP40 and modernizing it, largely the modernized elements were things like the grip here, which, as you can see, is pretty clearly copied from the HK, the MP5 or the G3, trigger guard as well. And then the buttstock is a telescoping buttstock similar to what HK was doing. So we have these two spring-loaded buttons, push those in, and the stock slides out. Slides way out. This is actually a quite long length of pull here. The Croatians are a fairly tall people, but even so, this is awfully long to my feel at least. In terms of controls, single standard trigger, there is no manual safety. We have a selector switch on the side here. A is automatic, and P is semi-auto. And this is a trigger mechanism taken directly from the Sten. Charging handle, the closest thing you have to a manual safety is that safety lock notch in the receiver. It does fire from an open bolt there. Now, for disassembly, we have to start by taking off the lower frame. It has a pair of, not coincidentally, HK-like push pins. Pop those out. And then this plastic frame. There we go, slides off. It feels a little bit fragile when you take it off. Obviously there's a metal shell under here that supports it, but it's kind of thin-walled on its own, so we'll be nice and careful with that. And then the rest of disassembly is very Sten-like. So we have a center button here on the recoil assembly, push that in, and we can slide the buttstock assembly off. And then, like a Sten, we're going to push this in, rotate it to unlock it, and we have an end cap there and the main spring. One slight difference from the Sten is that the bolt handle doesn't just lift out, it is actually threaded in place. So pull that back to here, and then unscrew the bolt handle, comes out, and then we have what is clearly a very Sten-like bolt right there. Fixed firing pin on the front of the bolt. Looking at the fire control system here, if you've ever seen the inside of a Sten fire control system, it is exactly this. So the outside concept wanted to be modeled on MP40 with some modernized German elements to it, but the mechanics of the Zagi are Sten. The last bit of disassembly in theory would be to take out this little set screw, and then you can take the barrel shroud out. There is a barrel under there. There it is, you can see it in there. It is a little bit shorter than the barrel shroud, kind of a distinctive element. We have a quick interlude here from the Sisak Municipal Museum, where after we filmed the main episode, we discovered access to serial number 5 pre-production version of the Zagi. So let me show you a quick look at what the pre-production guns actually looked like. Pretty much everything is the same here as the final production version, with the exception of the stock and the action cover, the lower cover, I suppose you could call it. So the production guns, actually, they took the time to set up polymer molds for the buttstock and for this action cover. But during development of the gun, they made them out of metal instead. And the obvious reason is you want to figure out exactly what your dimensions are going to be and how you're going to build the thing before you put in the time and expense to make those polymer molds. So this pre-production gun has a sheet metal cover here. The buttstock is fixed, unlike the telescoping stock of the final version, and it uses a very, very thin, by the way, pair of wooden grip panels over a sheet metal grip frame. So disassembly is the same, Sten-like, push in the button, the stock comes off. All the rest of the disassembly is the same as well. We have a single marking on here, serial number 5, there on the tang of the grip, out of the total final production of about 5,000 Zagis. And there you go, one field stripped Zagi M91. So there was, of course, a period of roughly 1991 where these were substantially used in Croatia. And by the time we get to 1992, as I said, the Croatian military forces are starting to standardize on more formal firearms. And so they have a lot of these sorts of submachine guns, in particular, a lot of the Zagi M91s that are coming back to warehouses and are being replaced by other weapons in formal service. What does one do with them? Well, 1992 is when the war breaks out in Bosnia. The Croatians are closely allied with the Bosnians. They want to send military aid. What do we have that we can send to Bosnia that isn't immediately needed here already? Well, we've got warehouses full of these submachine guns, and again, the Zagi in particular was supplied in pretty substantial numbers to Bosnia. Substantial enough numbers, in fact, that the Bosnians made their own copy of this using a wooden lower assembly instead of polymer because they didn't have the factory setup that Lekoweld had for making the polymer components here. But interesting that this is one that was made here in Croatia and then also copied in Bosnia because of its commonality there. So very cool to get a chance to take a look at this, one of the more common Croatian Homeland War submachine guns. A big thanks to the Croatian Police Museum for giving me access to film this and give it to you guys. They have a small but cool museum here with a bunch of interesting artifacts of the Homeland War. So if you ever find yourself in Zagreb, definitely take a few hours to stop by and check it out. Thanks for watching.